Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nimhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And folks, we are here. We are finally here. We've been counting down the days pretty much since the season ended back in January to see the first day of Mike McDonald's tenure as head coach of your Seattle Seahawks. I am absolutely buzzing with anticipation of getting down to the VMAC here in a few hours, seeing how this training camp is going to differ from ones in the past, looking at getting my eyes on Byron Murphy for the first time, getting my eyes on Christian Haynes for the first time, watching the way Scott Huff coaches the offensive line. We are going to have so much more information in the next few days and weeks as training camp unfolds. And there is so much to take in. For those of you that have not followed my training camp coverage in the past, I think you're going to like what you're going to get. There's a lot coming. My tendency, the way this usually works out is that the first few days, a lot of what I'm doing is charting the depth chart. I am, okay, who is first string on offense at all positions, second string, third string, who's first string, second string, third string on defense at all the positions. And then eventually I start getting into, okay, so when they're going to sub packages, when they're in nickel, who is the first people on the field, how do positions change. So I'm generally like, there's no way I can get that in one practice. They didn't even do all those things necessarily in one practice. I won't get to those things probably in two practices, but by 3 or 4, I should have a pretty good feel of the depth chart and the rotations, which then give us an idea of who has to ascend to either become a starter or ascend to make the roster, who's on the bubble, who maybe is in places that we didn't expect. Are they switching positions in ways we didn't expect? So that's a lot of what I will probably be covering early. I will also be covering, typical stuff. Who were standout players? Anything that jumped off the charts? Anything that stood out to me, interaction-wise or otherwise from the players. I should have some additional coverage for you this year. I can't quite get into all the details quite yet, but should become a little bit more obvious in the coming days, and we'll share what I can when I can. But this is going to be a lot of information. So if you can't get enough Seahawks coverage, you have come to the right place, because you are going to get a lot of Seahawks coverage. I will almost certainly go live after practice today, give you my impressions of what I saw, immediate instant reactions to what happened in practice. I will likely be covering the press conferences as well. We'll see how that goes. I will not be doing those live, but I will be giving you some information. There is going to be obviously a bit of a break when I'm in transit from the VMAC back to my place, but lots of content. I will also be publishing write-ups. I'm going to try to do it each day that I'm there. I will write up my notes and publish those to hawkblogger.com. So be sure to check those out. Tonight at 7 o'clock Pacific time, Stacy Rost will be joining Nathan Ernst and Jeff Simmons and I for Real Hawk Talk, as we will talk through day 1 of training camp. There's just a lot coming at you, folks, and I think it's a celebratory day. It's a day to enjoy being a Seahawks fan, enjoy being someone in the Pacific Northwest. Beautiful 70s sunny day here in Seattle. A great day to get this thing kicked off. Who knows? Maybe I'll even see Connor Williams. Probably not, but maybe we will. Wow, we've already got a super chat. I love that from, I think it's Hawks Zero, if I'm reading this right. What is your most bold prediction for this season? Ooh. I mean, one, as a little bit of a cop-out, I will say that any prediction I give before I've gotten eyes on the team for some period of time, the efficacy of those predictions are going to be the worst. So I would say I'll be more ready to make bold predictions at the end of camp than I am at the beginning of camp. As of right now, my bold prediction, if I were to pick one that I have a pretty decent belief in, I think that Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to lead the team in receptions. That will be my bold prediction for now. That might not be that bold depending on your perspective, but that would be my bold prediction right now. Folks, if you have not gone to hawkblogger.com recently, and you plan to go to training camp, or you just want to see information about every player on the Seahawks roster, I'm going to paste this into chat. Go to hawkblogger.com. That's a pretty easy one for you all to remember. But I posted my 90-man roster printout, handout. I posted it on hawkblogger.com yesterday. And I highly recommend, not just like as a ego thing, but honestly, I print this out for myself. I highly recommend you go there, download it, print it out, or you can look at it on your phone. But personally, I like having it printed out so I can scribble notes on it and things like that. It has information about every player on the 90-man roster, at least as of yesterday. There's a couple players that the Seahawks have signed that were not on the roster, so they're not on there, but everyone else is. Often you go to these things, you don't know what numbers, who's what number. That's the number one thing that you're going to get from this. Number two, it has a note on every single player, so you can kind of remember, refresh your memory. And three, a lot of times you're going with people that are maybe less obsessed than you are about the Seahawks. So having this gives them a little bit more information about, oh yeah, that guy is blah, blah, blah. So I highly recommend doing that. Print out a few extras, hand them out to people around you. People always appreciate it. So check that out at hawkblogger.com. All right. Let's get into the big questions. Let's do it. I have some questions. These are going to change as we go, but I always like to think about these things ahead of when I get to camp because, look, one of the bits of advice I'll give you if you're ever going to a training camp, you cannot watch everything. You cannot pay attention to everything. You don't have 17 eyes. You cannot process all of it. So you got to kind of pick things bit by bit, day by day to focus on. And for me, these are the things that are probably top of my list for today. Absolutely, we'll be looking at more than this, but these are the things that for my priority list are kind of top of mind. First thing on that list, depth chart on the offensive line. Anthony Bradford is healthy. He passed his physical. Where is he on the depth chart? McClendon Curtis was the number one at right guard on the depth chart through OTAs and minicamp. Where is he? Where is Christian Haynes? Is Christian Haynes third on the depth chart? He might be to start camp. Really going to be paying attention to that. I'm also going to be looking at left guard. Who is on the depth chart behind Laken Tomlinson? I assume Tremaine Ankrum is the current backup. Where is Satawa Lamea? Where is Mike Jarrell? Where's Garrett Greenfield? Where are some of these guys that maybe we, no shade to any of the folks covering the Seahawks on the beat. A lot of those guys do amazing work, especially my favorites, Brady Henderson, Michael Sean Dugar. Those guys are fantastic. Bob Condata does a really nice job as well. So, but they don't always give all the detail that I want. I want to know from top to bottom, what is that depth chart on the offensive line? Who is backup left tackle right now? I assume George Fant starting at right tackle, but who's backup left tackle? Who's backup right tackle? I want to know all those things. So those are big pieces. Probably the number one thing I will be trying to chart today is figuring out who's where on that offensive line. Because, guys, you all know this. This is the season. This is like the state of the roster. Will go as far as this offensive line will go. I will also be paying attention to kind of how they look, how they're coached relative to what we've seen in the past. Today won't be a padded practice, almost certainly. First day of practice is not padded. The padded practices are where you really get to see 1v1s. That's where you learn a lot. Every time I have gotten to 1v1 practices and been able to watch defensive players go against offensive linemen, you learn about both. It is a really big place. We won't get that today, but I am really curious to see how Scott Huff coaches that offensive line. So this offensive line in general, probably my number one priority to pay attention to. It can be a hard thing to pay attention to at times because it's not the most glamorous thing. Training camp in general, folks, the players you can learn the most about in terms of their talent, especially in a non-padded practice, are going to be guys like cornerbacks and receivers. Like those positions you can get a decent view of, a decent predictor of. It's pretty hard, especially in non-padded practices, for almost any other position, especially along the lines. All right, that's question one for me. Question two, rotation at outside linebacker, rotation on edge. I'm very curious about this. I'm curious both about, okay, what does the base defense look like? When it's base defense, who is out there? Is Boye Mafe out there? Is Draymond Jones out there? I assume Uchenna Nwosu's out there, so that's not a big question for me. But I am curious on base downs, who is the, quote, starting outside linebacker? My prediction going in is that it's going to be Draymond Jones on base downs. In nickel situations, I would guess that that's going to be Boye Mafe. Don't know. Want to know. Where does Derek Hall fit into all this? Is he second string? Is he third string? Where's Darrell Taylor? Second string, third string? I want to get my eyes on Nelson Caesar, on Sonny Anderson, Sundiata Anderson, if you want his full name. These are undrafted free agent edge rushers who come with some pretty good reputations. Are they guys I think have a chance to potentially challenge for roster spots? I talked about this today on the Seahawks 7. By the way, if you haven't seen the Seahawks 7, this is me at least experimenting with this notion of there's some people that really want quick news. They want quick shows. And there's people that like the longer form stuff. Hawk Blogger Mornings is typically going to be longer form, at least a half an hour, often will be closer to an hour. So I'm going to keep that as it is. But Seahawks 7 is going to be something I'm going to try to do for the people that want the quick fix. All your Seahawks news in 7 minutes or less every day. When it will happen every day, also question, right now it's happening in the mornings. It's possible I'll switch that to the afternoons. We will see. Just going to start playing with it. Love any feedback that you guys have. By the way, if you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, please do so. Really appreciate it. And easy time to do it. All right. So why am I bringing up the Seahawks 7? I talked about in there that one of the things I picked up around the league yesterday, the Carolina Panthers are pretty thin at the edge spot. They've got some injuries. They also just are not that deep. They traded away Brian Burns. It's a big question mark on that roster. I also have, if you paid attention to my linebacker options show that I did a while ago, and I've come back and shared again a few times, one of the trade possibilities at inside linebacker that I called out is Shaq Thompson. Now, I don't think this is the most likely, but this is something I'm monitoring because Shaq Thompson is a veteran. I don't think he's part of the long-term plans for the Panthers. He's still a decent player, although he had a down year last year. He's had some injuries. They restructured his contract this year just to keep him on the roster. So he had to restructure just to stay with the Panthers. So there's kind of a tenuous connection there. They could trade him without having big cap implications for them. Is there a chance that toward the end of camp, good buddies, Dan Morgan, the GM for the Panthers, and John Schneider, GM for the Seahawks, look at their relative rosters and say, hey, you know what? I'm John Schneider, and I'm like, hey, I've got a lot of edge players. Do you want one of these guys? Do you want Darrell Taylor? And Dan Morgan's like, yeah, I know Darrell Taylor. I was, probably around when that pick, or I was definitely scouting him, and he's young and he's coming up on free agency. So he could be a guy that would be a good guy to learn about with the Panthers and see if you want to re-sign him. In exchange, do you get Shaq Thompson? Because the Panthers, that's not a critical need for them. And it's not as high priority of a position. So is that a possibility? I think it is a possibility. I don't think it's likely. But these are the kinds of things I will monitor because that's just how I do things. In any event, all this ties back to this rotation at outside linebacker and edge. How do players look? How are they being utilized? How often are they in different packages? I want to see all of that. So that's a big one for me at question number 2. Question number 3. How is this offense different under Ryan Grubb? It's going to be hard you certainly won't know that after one day. Probably won't know that after the entire training camp and preseason. Like, he's not going to show his cards. But there will be things that I start to notice that feel different than what we saw under Shane Waldron. There will be plays that feel different. There will be utilization of players that feels different. I want to look formations that will be different. Some of the things I'll be looking for: how does he use motion? How often is he using motion? How condensed are his formations? Shane Waldron was very spread out. Are they going to be more condensed? We heard from the guys over at Bootleg Football that Ryan Grubb used FIB, formation into boundary, more than anybody else, 20% of the time, more than double anyone in the NFL, or the average of the NFL. The top in the NFL last year was the Dolphins at 14%. Do I see that? Do I see evidence of them doing that still? How does he use the tight end? How much is he using the running backs as receivers out of the backfield? How much is he using screen plays? Is he running the ball horizontally or vertically more? Are we seeing outside zone? A lot. Does he run Zach Charbonnet different than Kenneth Walker? Does he utilize Derek Young, Laviska Shenault, these guys that are runners at receiver? Does he use them differently? I want to know all that. And I'm going to be paying attention to all that. And I will make sure that you guys get all that information as well. So this is another big one. This is going to take time. It's going to take a lot of observation, but this is one that's high on my list. Next, question number 4. What are my impressions of Tyrell Dodson, T-Dot, and Jerome Baker? There's a chance, I would say there's a decent chance that those guys just kind of do individual drills today. Maybe they're not even on the field. They pass their physical, so I think they'll be out there. But they'll ease them in. There's no reason to go full bore the first day. But if they are cleared and they do practice, I just want to see okay, body type. How do they look out there? How do they move? I'm looking forward to kind of seeing them relative to the other players. How big of a gap is there between those two guys and the other backers, the inside backers on this roster? I want to see that. I'm curious about that. And I'm hoping, I guess I go into this expecting that they are going to be very different athletes than the other players at the position, save Tyrese Knight. I want to see Tyrese Knight, but Patrick O'Connell, John Radigan, if they are similar athletically, to Baker and Dodson, I don't think that speaks well of Baker and Dodson. And I'm just not, as you've heard before, I like John Radigan and Patrick O'Connell as depth players, as special teams players. I don't think they are NFL starters. There's a reason they were undrafted free agents. Now, Tyrell Dodson was also an undrafted free agent, you could say. But I'm hoping that there is an obvious difference there. I will definitely be paying attention to those guys and seeing the personalities. Like, how do they blend in? Are they vocal leaders? Are they guys that just kind of are part of the group and day one, are they just blending in? So that's my fourth question heading into camp. My fifth question could be my first question. I mean, guys, how excited am I to see Byron Murphy in person for the first time? The answer to that question is easy. I'm very excited to see Byron Murphy. And yes, of course, I'm sure I'll be like, oh my God, he's got big legs like everybody else. But I also just want to see how he moves, how he conducts himself, how he interacts with coaches and players, how hard does he go? And honestly, like, of all the guys that I cannot wait for padded practice, he and Christian Haynes are top of the list. But like, I want to see him be a problem in 1v1s. I want to see him just be really, I would love to see him against Christian Haynes. I mean, come on. That could be iron sharpening iron. I would love to see that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I could basically say the same thing about almost every draft pick. I'm looking forward to seeing AJ Barner. I am looking forward to seeing Christian Haynes. But Byron Murphy, for me, he is high up there on the list for today. So those are my top 5. There's obviously others. I'm not going to, sit here and go through every possible question I am going to have in training camp. Those are my top 5. And I see a lot of other questions, I think, are guys like toward the back end of the roster. I think I'm really curious to see the receiver rotation. Where's Eskridge in that rotation? Where's Laviska Shenault? Are there any surprises? Is Aesop Winston or Cody White or Derek Young, are they higher up or lower down in the rotation than maybe I expect? I'm interested in seeing Kenny McIntosh. I haven't had eyes on Kenny McIntosh. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like, how he moves relative to the other backs. Obviously, looking at Sam Howell, I've seen him play, so I have some idea, but looking forward to kind of watching him spin the ball. I am curious about the back end of the tight end room. I think Noah Fant, Farrah Brown, and AJ Barner are locks. But what's going on with Jack Westover, Tyler Mayberry, and Brady Russell? I don't know. Are any of them being used as fullback? Like, is Westover being used as a fullback? I don't know. I'm curious. Question here from someone on chat. Will you be able to get interviews with players? I guess you'll have to wait and see. I don't know. We will see. We'll find that out together. I always end up getting some interviews with players over the course of the season. This season might be a little different, so don't know what I can share there yet, but that should clarify hopefully pretty soon. I am really curious about Tyrese Knight. He's piqued my interest. He's gone from disappointing selection, where day of the draft, moment of the the pick, I was like, ugh, man, that's the guy we traded back for. I don't know. That was my initial reaction. Gonna be always honest. To where now I'm like, there's some indicators here. This guy was coming on in OTAs and minicamp, had some interceptions, was making some plays. Is just a he is a bloodhound when it comes to sniffing out the football and the ball carrier. So I'd like to see what he looks like for sure. One of my top questions was gonna be, what are these rookie cornerbacks like? DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett. Those guys are on NFI. So I could say one of my top questions is going to be, what's their deal? Which we will find out, I'm pretty sure today, what their deal is. And we'll go from there. I mean, I am curious about the safety, the back end of the safety room. I think Julian Love, Rayshon Jenkins, and Kayvon Wallace are locks. But who's that fourth safety? Is it Jonathan Sutherland? Is it Kobe Bryant? Ty Okada? There are absolutely questions to be answered there. I see someone mentioning Jarek Reed, and Jarek Reed is on PUP. So Jarek Reed will not be there today. I see the question about Connor Williams. And the fact of the matter is, we don't know. Connor Williams was in Seattle yesterday. We know that. Tuesday. Made a visit with the Seahawks. We know that Connor Williams was a guy that Drew Rosenhaus's agent had said in June had made a, quote, miraculous recovery from his injury, and that he was saying he'd be ready for training camp. I think that's probably what the Seahawks are checking out. We know that Connor Williams wants to play center, not guard. He can play both, but he prefers to play center. We know that Connor Williams was the number 2 graded center in all of football last season when he was on the field, behind only Frank Ragnow over there in Detroit. So that's what we know. As I've talked about before with Connor Williams, to me, any signing of Connor Williams is good news. It means the Seahawks see that he's either ready to be a part of the team early this year, later this year, or maybe even next year. I think he's a good enough player that he is worth signing, even if you don't think he's going to be a big part of your team this season, but you do believe medically he will recover fully and can be part of your future plans. And I'll continue to say this is not because Olu Oluwatimi is bad and we need to get something better than Olu Oluwatimi. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what he looks like. He is one of my questions individually. I want to see if he looks more powerful than he was a year ago. I think he can be a perfectly fine starting center, maybe even above average starting center. But look, let me put it in an extreme. If Laramie Tunsil had been injured and was a free agent, and he came to the Seahawks to visit, I would 100% be saying, sign that dude, even though you got Charles Cross. Charles Cross so far has been proven to be an average to slightly above average left tackle. He's still very young. He could absolutely develop. It's not about him being bad or whatever. Laremy Tunsil's one of the best left tackles in football. And if you can lock down a guy that's already proven to be a blue chip offensive lineman, you get him. And you don't worry about whose feelings it's going to hurt. You don't worry about how it affects your rotation. You add the best talent you can to your team and you let the players figure it out. So that's where I am with Connor Williams. If they believe he can play and be healthy, even if it's next season, I'm like, sign this dude. Sign him. But we don't know. I think it's just as likely that the medical staff looked at him and were like, I don't know what they're smoking. This guy is never going to play again. That is absolutely a reality. So a possible reality, I should say. We just have to wait and see. As of now, no news there. Would love to have some breaking news at any moment. That would be really fun. If that happens, I will obviously jump back on emergency pod style. We will talk about it. But yeah, there's a ton to focus on with these Seahawks starting today. So I'm going to wrap there on a shorter note for Hawk Blogger Mornings this morning, because you're going to get a ton of content. This isn't even a double pod Wednesday. This is going to be a triple, quadruple, quintuple pod Wednesday, potentially. Tons more content coming your way. Be sure to click like and subscribe. Click the bell to get notified, because when I go live is going to be unpredictable day to day. You're going to want to make sure you're getting notified when those are happening. You can obviously always watch the replays whenever you'd like. Go to patreon.com/hawkblogger. That's where you get the ad-free access to the audio versions of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I will not be posting every single pod video that I do as a audio podcast. I'm not doing the Seahawks 7. That's silly. I'm not going to do that as an audio. I'm not going to do every single post training camp thing necessarily as an audio. We'll see. But for the most part, every Hawk Blogger Mornings you can count on. Every emergency pod you can count on. And then obviously, Real Hawk Talk will go on for everybody as usual. But patreon.com/hawkblogger, get access to the audio version ad-free. Also get access to the Slack channel where a bunch of folks are there. It's a great, great group. And that's where you get to ask questions for the Real Hawk Talk crew. And tonight, that includes Stacy Rost. So you get to ask questions of all the folks on there. It's a great time. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. And be a YouTube member. YouTube membership's a lot of fun. You get a little emblem next to your name. I'll always know when you ask questions. I'll do my best to respond. As we get into the season, club level, suite level, there'll be additional perks we can figure out for people that are really supporting the show in that manner. So appreciate you all in whatever way that you support the show, even just watching. Really, really appreciate it. This is going to be fun this season. Can't wait for all that's to come. Everybody, this has been episode 122 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Emhauser. I will see you all later today. Take care. Go Hawks.